Hello.
Hello?
Hi, Paul
Yes, this is Paul.
and Julia.
Paul and
Yes.
Julia.
Hi, how are you?
Hi. Good. How are you?
Very
Good.
good, very good.
Just a quick heads up. It's on the form and everything, but we just remind everybody that we're recording all Zoom sessions and consultations and stuff, and we post it on YouTube.
Okay.
Okay. So I just looked over your form, and we got Toby, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And you're seeing some human and dog aggressiveness.
Yes.
Yeah, and a couple other things, but I think that's what got us to schedule this consultation or look at Canine Perspective. Mostly because, yeah, there was an incident or maybe a couple incidents where he seems to be very possessive over certain things.
Sure.
And if somebody gets in the way of that, who he doesn't know, to me and Julia, it's a non-issue. We can take anything we want away from him whenever we want. Doesn't matter.
Sure.
It's people that he doesn't necessarily know, or dogs in some instances.
Mostly dogs.
Mostly dogs, I should say. When they are trying to take something away from him, he will sometimes growl and even nip at them. I think the most recent experience was my niece, when he was eating his dinner, walked up to him, grabbed his tail. I don't know if anybody knows, but he nipped at her and growled, and I think everybody kind of lost it a little bit. So
Sure.
Yeah. And to preface that, sorry. So this has only happened once with the nipping of a human. He is a little unsure of kids. So I think it was like a perfect storm of him eating her. She's only 3 years old. She, I think we think she like might have pulled his tail, and he nipped at her face.
Okay.
So that obviously that was the straw that broke the camel's back. He has had like fights with dogs at like parks or whatever over like a bone or a stick or a ball, whatever. And it's only when there's an item involved. We've never had an issue with just, him being aggressive out of nowhere. It's possessiveness.
Okay.
he
Anything else?
plays very well with other dogs.
Yeah.
Most of the time, like 95% of the time, he's running around with them. They're wrestling. I'm having a good time. It's only once something gets in between the two.
Yeah. And he goes to daycare twice a week, so he's socialized with dogs. And they've never had an issue, although they don't also allow, they don't bring out toys or anything. So it's just dogs playing together, and there's never been an issue there. So
Anything else about Toby?
Yeah, I could add just one more thing. I think on walks, he's very sorry for the noise. What's the best way to say it? He kind of leads the way. Sometimes he does a lot of stopping and
Sure.
sniffing, so we're doing a lot of kind of pulling on our walks if he's not really into it. Other times he's very much into it and leading the way. But also if he wants to go a certain way, we want to go a certain way, there's always kind of this tug of war on who's going to be right here. So we're usually doing some pulling with Toby on walks. I think that's the only other thing that
it's just like
bothers me.
He's overall a really good boy. Like he knows his commands. Like he's very obedient with us. He's calm and playful. It's the possessiveness that's the issue here, and the whole, he's just not trusting of kids, and really, like, I guess random strangers, but like the kids thing is a little.
the random strangers thing. Could you explain that a little more?
Well, I guess I guess we've never had an issue with, but he's not like, if there's somebody new that comes around, he doesn't, I don't know, I guess it depends on person to person, right? Like
I
he
mean,
goes up and he's friendly, but sometimes, especially males, he's like sometimes unsure. I don't
Is
know.
this in the home or outside or both?
I guess both. Mainly outside. We haven't really had like people here that much.
well, like that one instance with your friend, Lauren.
Oh,
She was
yeah.
petting him.
She was petting him, and he's met her before. He was very friendly with her.
Okay.
And then we were all sitting down, and she pet him in a way that he apparently didn't like. And this has happened now 2 or 3 times, where with people he knows, not maybe he doesn't see them every day by any means, but he's met before, and they go at him from like above.
Oh, sure.
I've seen that like all 3 times that I've seen it. That's exactly the same thing happened. He was like they were coming up from above with the hand like down on his face, and he just, it's not a bite, but he kind of just like air bites almost, or like a little growl, just like get off of me.
Yeah.
But then he's back to like licking them.
Sure.
It's just like that motion that he doesn't like.
Somebody doesn't like it.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm assuming recall, like if he's at the dog park or something off leash, like needing him to come back, or is he pretty good?
He's actually pretty good.
Yeah.
I would say he's pretty good.
Okay.
Gotten much better at that.
If he's having a lot of fun and he's like playing with dogs, it takes a few times of calling him back. But he's very, like, if I pretend to like leave him and run away, he'll like come chasing because he's very attached to us.
Sure.
But I think for the most part, yeah, recall. He's gotten really, really good at recall. I think we had troubles with that earlier, but we just kept on with training and practicing, just coming and feeding him. So like he's gotten really good, I think, at that.
Okay. Anything else?
I don't think so.
No, I mean, other than like normal dog things like afraid of fireworks, but
Yeah.
I don't know if that's his fault.
No, that's good to know, and I'll explain why later.
Yeah, he does have some fear on certain things, right? Like loud noises, big trucks, like semi trucks or buses. Like he seems weary of them. And yeah, like fireworks, definitely. Like, and there was never really the biggest issue until recently, where one, they've been going off nonstop. Seems like around us. And he like genuinely runs away and tries to hide in a bed or a closet, which again, that's very new. That's very recent.
The scaredy cat thing has been more recent. I feel like he gets more scared easily.
Gotcha. If you're outside with him at the park and he was off leash and someone set off a random firework, do you think he'd run to you or run away?
Ooh. Good. I don't know. He like panics. He does come to us for like if I'm at home. Like yesterday, perfect example. Something went off and we had our balcony open, and he came right under my feet. If I'm at the park though, I think he panics and like, his tail goes under, and I think he would.
The thing is, when that happens, when we're on leash with him and he hears a boom, he's pulling home.
Yeah.
And he's pulling home very hard. We're essentially running back with him. Okay. So I don't know if that's telling of what would happen in that situation. We haven't been through that situation, but I think,
he'd run away.
I think he'd run away.
Yeah, I'll explain all this stuff to you, okay? So good news is you have a normal dog, okay? And I'm gonna explain everything and why your dog is what I would deem normal, okay? These behaviors can be addressed, so no big deal. Super common, I deal with it all the time, okay? So I would start with the resource guarding. Dogs are primal, right? And you know, if you buy a bag of kibble, there's more bags of kibble, right? Dogs don't. Even though he might get a meal once or twice every day guaranteed from you guys, like it doesn't register like it's guaranteed. I don't have to worry about it, right? And if another dog ate my meal, no worries because there's more. So dogs are very primal and they don't think to that degree of like, oh, there's more food. I don't have to worry, so I don't have to protect my food. So it's a very natural instinct. So the resource guardian that you're seeing against, when you said people he doesn't know, is completely normal. My dogs are the same way. I can take whatever I want from my dogs, but nobody else could, right? And they're not aggressive where they'll attack them, but they'll warn them and they'll growl. And you want to think, like, let's say you just met someone and then they start to like grab your car keys. Like, are you going to trust them to grab your car keys? Probably not, right? No, yeah. But you know, you're a human and you wouldn't like just beat them up. You would be like, hey, those are my car keys. And then if they continue to pursue to take your car keys, things may escalate. But the difference for people is instead of getting physical, you might just call 911 and say, look, someone stole my car keys. I think they're going to try to steal my car, right? Dogs don't have that. And they don't have that insight of like, oh, if the dog takes something from me, I can ask mom and dad and they'll go get it for me, okay? So the guarding aspect there against other people is normal. When you say around dogs, it's the same thing. Like if he's at the dog park and he sees a bone, he doesn't understand that it's a community bone or a community, you know, tennis ball. He just thinks finders keepers and this is mine, okay? And we can address those things. So again, that's not a problem, but I just want you to understand where he's coming from. Because I think the common notion nowadays is every dog is friendly, happy-go-lucky, loves everyone and everything. And if you get a dog with these kind of behaviors, you have like a dog that went off the wrong assembly line. You know, it's not how it is. They're perfectly normal behaviors. He just needs to understand that it's not an appropriate behavior because humans make things complicated. Okay, because in his world, if it was just him and other dogs and no humans, they would settle it themselves, right? Where they would get in a fight, and if he wins, he is now the dominant energy over that resource unless another dog comes to challenge him for it and wins, then he becomes the subordinate and the other dog goes, this is now my resource, you can't have access to it. And it just continues going, okay? So all that's normal. The approach from above. Yes, sir.
Sorry to interrupt you. I have to step out for a second
Sure.
to handle something, but Julia will fill me in. I'm just very sorry.
No.
But thank you so much. This is super helpful so far.
Yeah, and I can send you the link too, so you can always watch this afterwards.
Perfect.
Oh, perfect.
The approach from above, okay, is super common.
Yeah.
Whenever I approach a dog, I never approach him from above. I was squat down, I give the side of my body, and I give space so the dog can approach me, right? Because I'm a dog trainer. People, again, stuck in that notion of every dog's friendly, just comes in, and what he's doing is he's correcting and he's saying, don't approach me that way. I don't like it.
Yeah.
Okay. So in his world, dogs correct dogs. They how do you say, they what's the word, regulate each other. In our world, laws and law enforcement regulate people, okay? So if someone, again, did something you disagreed with, you don't just punch them, right? Like we may have a verbal disagreement and we might settle it through, you know, just through conversation. In some cases it does escalate, but there's like this kind of process, right? For dogs, if another dog were to try to mount him and he decides, hey, I don't like you trying to mount me, he'll correct them with a nip or bite, okay? That's their language. So they don't, you know, look to laws to protect them. They look to themselves and each other, okay? So he's not being aggressive. He's simply saying, I don't like you doing that. Don't do that. And then he resolves it by going, no hard feelings.
Yeah.
Right? He doesn't keep the tension. He lets it go and says, no hard feelings, but just don't do that again, okay? So when it comes to things like that, it's really me educating you and Paul. Like if I saw someone approaching my dog, like my Chihuahua doesn't like that, for instance, you know, and he doesn't like it if you put his face to his face unless he trusts you. Okay. So if I saw someone about to do that or thinking of doing that, I would tell them, don't do that. I was like, my dog doesn't like it, and that's not your dog. Don't do that. Right. Because that's my responsibility as his owner, or for a parent, if you want to look at it that way. Okay. So again, not out the ordinary. That wouldn't be anything that I would address in the sense of like training him to like it. It'd be more so educating you on it's okay. You have to address it for him. Okay.
Yep.
The unsure of kids. This is pretty common.
Yeah.
So again, you know, dogs regulate each other. And in our world, if you go to the grocery store and you see a kid screaming and throwing a tantrum, you might think the parent needs to do something about this, right? But you wouldn't go and spank the kid. It's not your place. In the dog world, doesn't matter if they're from different homes or families or, you know, different owners. If dogs see a puppy getting out of line, they'll correct the puppy, and they don't care about, you know, the mom or the dad coming by and like getting pissy with them, telling me, what are you doing to my puppy, right? They regulate each other, and that's how they teach manners and things like that. So you want to look at kids as puppies. So for him, he doesn't recognize that these are little children and that it's not his place to regulate them. He's just thinking they're puppies, and this is what we do to puppies. Otherwise, they end up being jerks. Okay. So if there's unsureness in the sense of like, if they were to approach him and he tries to run away from him, that's a little bit different. That would be something we want to work on to teach him that kids aren't a threat. Okay.
Okay. Because he does.
Now, he does do that. Okay. So that would be something we want to.
He tries to back away. He tries to get away from them.
Okay. So then the other thing I look at is, what's the kid's energy like? Okay. So if they come approaching him like, dog, right, like this, he's not going to like it. Right. It's too much energy. So it's partially educating the children. That's not how you approach a dog.
Yeah.
Okay. But then partially showing them how to do so correctly. And then teaching Toby that he can be approached and making it a positive experience so that he starts to look at them differently. But we can't make him like the kids. We can try, but we can't make it happen. That's on Toby. Okay. So it's kind of like, you know, for us, we have our likes and dislikes. No one can make you like something. They cannot force you to like it. Okay. They can try to persuade you. They can try to expose you. But ultimately, if you're like, nope, don't like it, it is what it is. Right. Same thing in that context. Okay. Plays well with dogs, you know, everything with the resource guarding. The positive is that it's a context. Right. So what that means is if I'm at the dog park and I see tennis balls, I know if Toby gets a hold of one of those tennis balls, there's going to be tension. But if he doesn't have a tennis ball, I don't have to worry about anything.
We never bring anything. It's like if we're already there and someone new comes,
right?
With a toy, and the thing is, sometimes he doesn't care about the toy. Like sometimes he's like, whatever. It's just like sometimes he does. It's random. And
yes.
Then, you know, at the park, there's random sticks. Like that's like uncontrollable. And like if he finds a stick he likes and he wants to protect it, like that's that.
Yeah. And it's easy to address. Okay. Resource guarding is simple. Especially with the approach that I use, and I'll talk more about that. So I'm not worried about any of that stuff. Okay. The walking, that's just formal obedience. You know, just teach them how to walk correctly on a leash. Again, easy to address, not a problem. The fireworks, okay? So my next question after you said he's pretty good at recall is the way I approach things is I go by what is realistic and what is applicable to my client, okay? Most trainers is cookie cutter. This is our program. This is what you have to learn. This is what we're going to do, okay? When I come in, I go, what's the issue? What are you needing? What are you wanting? okay, this is the minimum of what you would need, and this is like the other options you have depending on how much you want, right? And then the owner picks. So with the recall, when you said he's pretty good, but at the dog park, we might have to call him a couple of times before he comes, right? For me, that's not good, right? Because I think either realistic or case of emergency scenarios, okay? Because that's when you need it to be absolutely 100% reliable, okay? So which led me to the question of, the fireworks thing, right? Is because let's say you take them somewhere, let's say you take them to a park where people take their dogs. It's not a dog park, it's just a park, but people take their dogs to play. But it's not enclosed. And someone randomly sets off a firework, right? I'm thinking that scenario. It's rare, especially if you only take them to dog parks, obviously your chance of that happening is very low, right? And the off chance that maybe one day you just decide, like, let's take them to the park, and then on that very day something happens, right? Is I get many of my clients that do this, and they take their dogs to unenclosed parks all the time. And you do too?
There's what you exactly just said. There's a park that's not a dog park that's mostly enclosed, but there are two like little gaps on the sides, and it's huge. So it's like people take their dogs there.
Sure.
Go there.
Right. So that's where I'm thinking. Okay, is that if something like that happened where he was off leash in an area that wasn't entirely enclosed, and a truck backfired, a firework happened, a big loud noise off in the distance goes off, and he gets spooked, the level of recall you have now, I would say, because it's not obedience anymore, it's behavior. It's I'm scared, and it's every dog for themselves, and I'm gone. Okay, it's flight mode. So if you call him running away isn't him being disobedient, it's him trying to save his life, because that's his primary instinct, is survive and replicate, okay? So unless he's been neutered, then just survive, okay? So that's the stuff that I think about, because it does happen. I had a client, their dog took off before training, took off, went over a golf course hill and got picked up by a hawk, okay? They had a little Yorkie. Another client, their dog, when she was little, took off, tried to jump a fence, didn't clear the fence, got impaled. I had another client the dog took off because of fireworks. Another client's dog took off because of rabbits. So these are all things that happen that people don't account for. And they think if every experience that they've had has been relatively good, that they're thinking in that scenario, it's going to be the same expectation. I tell them no, because the dog's in flight mode or prey drive, and you have to be able to override that in order to get the dog to come back. Okay. So before reaching out, did you or Paul do any research on me?
I will be honest, Paul did.
Paul did. Okay.
He did. He did, because we looked at a few places, I would say. Because originally we were thinking, we went on our honeymoon in March, and we were actually going to leave him during that week. It was like 10 days at a place, like an academy,
Sure.
in the southwest side, I think they were.
That's what we're talking about, yeah.
And then we opted against it. And I think the scenario with Paul's niece, just 2 weekends ago, where he nipped at her, that was the first time that happened, where he actually nipped at someone.
Yeah.
She had a mark, and there was a little bit of blood. Like, it wasn't great. So I think that tipped it over the edge, and he went back and did research. I was not involved in the research, so.
Okay. Well, no worries. I'll catch you up, and it's a good thing if it's the place that I'm thinking. It's a good thing you didn't go, because they're terrible. Okay.
Great. Wow.
So, and before I move on, the tail nip. I'm sorry, not the tail. The whole nip around the tail scenario. Okay. After learning what you just learning now, do you understand it better?
Yeah.
Right. So
Why he nipped her?
correct.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like I am more understanding of Toby's reactions and behaviors than Paul. Paul is more like he shouldn't be doing this, like he can't
I
be
understand.
nipping
Yeah.
people. So
So there's two kind of thought processes here. There's the one where the person can see behind it and go, it makes sense.
mhm,
And then there's the others that go, dogs don't do that because it's a human,
right.
right? And I'm the, of course, I'm the understanding
Mhm,
person, that because also just my education on dog behavior and my experiences, right? And it would be similar to, like, let's say your niece was just pulling on your ear, right? And it hurt. And it's not your kid, so you wouldn't just smack her, but you'd be like, ow, like, no, like, get away from me, right? But dogs don't have that language. He doesn't have the ability to say, don't pull my tail, please. That's disrespectful and that hurt. Because if puppies do that, they just nip and bite. That is how dogs correct. So he simply corrected her and said, don't touch my tail. Okay. If he really wanted to do harm, he would have, for sure. Okay. That was a correctional bite. So, and you're talking to someone who's come into homes where one dog killed the other dog. Homes where a dog had multiple bites and sutures and drains. Like, I deal with very high aggression. These are scars from a dog bite, because they didn't want to go in the kennel. So he withheld. He knew he was teaching a lesson, and all the things that you're telling me is just him setting a boundary. They're normal, quote, healthy behaviors. They just don't translate well in the human world,
right.
because we have lawsuits, we have liability. Of course, that's a young girl that we don't want to get, psychologically scarred. It depends on the kid. We're like, oh my God, the dog bit me, right? When really it's just a tiny, I shouldn't say tiny to like kind of blow it off, but it was a very calculated nip. He didn't intend to do harm. He just intended to teach a lesson. Okay. And I
Our
have a whole thing behind that. Go ahead.
no, my like our my I guess my fear is that it doesn't escalate. Like I hope he never gets to a point where he's leaving scars on people. That's what I'm scared of.
Correct. And that's why it comes down to you as his owners being proactive.
Hmm.
Okay. Um, and so, one, I never leave a dog unattended with children. Right. I'm always watching, and I don't care if you have a golden retriever, the sweetest dog in the world, because I've had clients have like a golden for years, sweetest dog, and then one day it bites one of their kids, and they're like, "Oh my God, my dog's human aggressive now," and they call me up, and I'm like, "Explain what happened." And they go, "We don't know, Jesse. We weren't there." And I go, "Well, that's your fault as a parent, because you never leave an animal unattended with the child, right?" The kid's probably pulling on their ears, pulling on their jowls, pulling on their tail, climbing all over them. And everybody has a breaking point. And if that dog tolerated it for 4 years, that's a very patient dog, right? But one day it was just enough is enough, right? Other dogs might be a bit more inclined to just right away set the boundary, which in my book is healthy, because it's like they're not allowing some gray area where things can be like misconstrued. The dog's very like consistent. Don't disrespect me. And that at a healthy level. Okay. So again, it'd be educating you on these behaviors and what we can realistically expect. It's all about teaching kids how to correctly and appropriately um, socialize with dogs, because you want to think Toby did that to your niece, correct? And it was a healthy correction. However, let's say she didn't learn a lesson and she goes to her friend's house and she thinks, well, I did it to Toby and nobody said anything. What happens if well, how about I just do it to this dog because it's so friendly? Because kids, they don't have experience and foresight like we do. They're still learning. And then it ends up not being well with that particular dog. And I've had that happen because the way you allow a child to interact with the family or the immediate dogs is how they interact with outside dogs.
Yeah. So in this, I should preface, in this scenario, Haley, they have a dog. They have Manny, and he, bless his soul, like she can do whatever she wants with him. So I think that's where
Yes.
the fault was, like, and we were watching him like nonstop. It was like literally a split second. So that's where she approaches Toby like she approaches Manny.
Yes.
So that's where, you know, that's where the I guess misinterpretation was on her little, you know, and because
Correct.
she thinks she can do whatever she wants, and Toby's not like Manny.
Correct. And she got lucky because she got Toby.
Right.
Okay. Trust me. Again, I hear some horror stories. Okay. And I don't mean this to scare you. I'm just making you aware of the reality of children, dog, human relationships. And, you know, and I tell this to my clients. I tell them, this sounds silly, but teach your child to ask permission to pet your own dog. Because then when they want to pet their friend's dog, when they want to pet somebody else's dog in the street, they're going to go by their experience, which is I ask for permission. Yeah. Okay. And then the way that you expose them, and like, you know, if it's like slow and gentle and things like this, and you teach them how to appropriately approach, they transfer that. So, you know, Haley transferred, in my opinion, incorrect approach and too much comfort to Toby, but it didn't transfer to Toby well. You know, he's a different personality type. Okay. So does that all make sense there?
Yeah.
Perfect. So for what you're listing here, it's very simple stuff. So to educate you on how I approach things, I'm known as predominantly an e-collar trainer. Okay. Are you familiar with e-collar? Have you ever, are you familiar with electric fence?
Yeah. Oh, is it the not, they call them the shock collars, but the vibrate collars?
Yeah. So the most common term is known as the shock collar. There's a reasoning behind that. It's not electricity. Okay. It's electric, but not electricity is how I put it. Have you ever been to a chiropractor or a physical therapist?
Yes.
Okay. Have you ever had STEM?
No.
The machine that moves muscles.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's an e-collar.
Okay.
Okay, so people typically think it's like a taser. They think it's like you know, touching an electrical line, and you're like, no, right? That's not what it is. Okay, it's a centralized electric current that only moves the muscles it's making contact with. Okay, the reason why I use this tool, and I use it for puppies at 6 months and above. Okay, so all my clients' dogs are trained on this tool. Is one, you get off-leash reliability. So should Toby be in an area where it's unenclosed and something happens, like a firework, and he takes off, again, he's not doing anything bad. He's just running for his life. I can make him come back because I have control. Okay. When it comes to like the resource guarding, it makes it super simple. Because if I see Toby going to possess a stick, I can use the collar to stop him from even picking up the stick. So there's nothing to guard.
So if he has that on though, and he's going for the stick, and like I vibrate him, that will make him not take the stick?
Yeah, so when we deal with resource guarding, you want to think preventative. Okay. We can't make Toby share. Okay. Well, I shouldn't say we can't, because it is possible. It's just very nuanced that for the standard dog owner or average dog owner, it's like difficult. Okay. Because sharing is a human thing. Remember, like you can tell a kid like, hey, don't worry about that last piece of cake. There's another piece of cake. There's more cake in the fridge. That they're not going to throw a fit when another kid takes the last piece, right? You can't teach that to Toby. He doesn't know that. So what we do is, if I know he's going to possess things at the dog park, and I know you said it's sometimes, and it's kind of like, unpredictable when he's going to resource guard, then I don't even allow it, because there's no comment, there's nothing to pick up on to say, oh, that's the time he's gonna do it, right? So when it comes to preventative control, I just assume things. I just assume whatever you go towards at the dog park, you're gonna guard. So I'm not gonna allow you to have it. Okay. All that means is he's not gonna have anything. He's just gonna play with the other dogs. Okay. So it's all about preventative. And it doesn't mean that, like, if you go to like another park where you're isolated and you want to throw a stick for him to fetch or whatever, you can do that. Who cares? Because there's no other dogs. You're in a controlled context. But when we're thinking when there's other dogs or whatever around, that we want to prevent that from happening. Okay. So what makes e-collar so effective is that it's very simple to teach. It removes a lot of technical skill. So like, have you ever heard of a prong collar, the spiky looking one?
Yeah.
Okay. I like prong collars. They're very good tools, but they take a bit of technical control or technical skill to know how to use correctly. Okay. The other problem is if you take the leash off, you still don't have control. Like if he decides to run away and your leash is off, like you have no means of getting him back. Okay. The other thing is it's too confrontational, because you have to yank the collar and it creates too much confrontation with the dog. E-collar, the dog doesn't know where it's coming from, so there's no conflict. Also, if I see something happening 20 feet away, 30 feet away, like maybe you're having a conversation, you turn and all of a sudden you see Toby already in possession of a bone or stick, and you're like, oh crap, you know, I didn't stop him before. You can stop him right then. Okay, you're able to address him even if he's already got something going on. If somebody set off a firework and spooks him, you can make him come back. Okay, the leash walking stuff is very simple with this tool as well. What I also like is transference is very high. So like, let's say you work with Toby first with the training, and then we have Paul work with him. Everything that you just taught Toby is immediately going to just transfer over to Paul, about 75, 80%. Okay. And then during the week, you guys just do your practice and you get as close to 100% as possible. Okay. So typically the leash walking takes 2 classes. The recall takes 2 classes. And then the other things that you're wanting would probably be 2 classes. Okay. So, because I have 6, 9, and 12-week programs. And the way I formulate my programs is according to what the owner is needing and wanting. And yours is fairly simple. You just want your dog to not pull, come when you call them, and then these minor behavior issues. Okay, so that's what I would that's how I would imagine it would progress. I usually leave the behavior stuff towards the end so that you have a lot of, or quite a bit of comfort and kind of fluidity in how the e-collar works, that when we jump into behavior, you already have experience and you're knowing and understanding the concepts as I go over them with you. Okay? Question so far?
Yeah,
hello?
not yet, but I'm sure I'll have some. So does this collar, does it hurt them?
Okay.
Hello?
So hello?
You can hear me, right?
Yeah, so you said this collar, does it hurt them?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the higher so my collar goes 0 to 127. Okay. Other collars go 0 to 10. And what that means is, so 10 and 127 are the same, but I have 117 more breaks. Okay. So I can really fine tune it to the dog and their personality type. Okay. And the way the theory is, or my theory is, as low as possible, but as high as needed, is how I operate. Okay. So the reason why it's effective is dogs are physical animals. You know, if something bothers Toby and he doesn't like it, he's using physicality to say, don't do that. Right. And even though his physicality is, in my opinion, to a healthy degree, he's still using a nip or bite to teach that lesson, right?
Mm-hmm.
So look at the e-collar as a means of nipping or biting Toby, appropriate to what's going on, right? So like, let's say in your neighborhood, Toby's number out of 127 is 25. It's relatively low. It's pretty standard. And he's perfect. But then you take him off to a park he's never been before. There's a lot of dogs and people. Your number might be 65 because that's what's appropriate to what's going on in that environment, okay? Ideally, we don't want the dog yelping, okay? On occasion, it may happen. Like, let's say we're working and then we get good contact and then all of a sudden he yips. Then right away I respond and I go down lower and I adjust it, okay? Let's say we're in a setting where he takes off running because he's scared for his life. You might end up on 127, which is the highest power, and it's very uncomfortable. And I would say, yes, it hurts. But in that degree or that context, you're needing him to return and you have to override the fear. So you have to make yourself more concerning than what he's already concerned about. And we do that through power. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's all appropriate to the context and what's going on. I don't know what Toby's number is going to be, so I don't like telling people, oh no, we're going to be, at 5 and it's going to be great, because every dog is different. I can get dogs that are seemingly very nervous and anxious, and they'll have a very high number. And I get the same personality types with a different dog, but they have a very low number. It's just their perception of what the collar is, okay? And that's why we start with the leash walking exercise first, because that's what teaches us, what does Toby need? And then as you practice with them through the week and you learn him more and he learns what it is and becomes more comfortable with it, it starts to you find a range where you'll say like, yeah, Toby's number is like 15 to 25, 80% of the time. But if there's something big going on, he's at 45, Questions so far?
Yeah, so let's say in a scenario, like, okay, so let's go back to the Haley nip. At what point, like, if he had the collar then, we can't predict, you can't, like,
right, so that's
him before, but then would it be, do you vibrate him after, or does that at that point not matter because he already did it and he doesn't know what he did wrong, or like, how does that work?
Technically you would do it as it happens, okay? So, and there's a whole exercise around that, okay? Because you're worried about what if he nips Haley again, right? But from my understanding, he'd only nip Haley if the owners allowed her to overstep a boundary, right? So that's where education comes in. I go, look, if Haley's going to interact with Toby, that's fine, but we're going to do it this way. And if we can't do it this way, then it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Okay. And because he's not going out of his way to nip Haley. That's the difference. I get dogs that see a kid and are shrieking to get them in an aggressive fashion. That's different because the dog is being, the dog is targeting without any kind of, provocation, and saying, let me at that kid. Right. That we would put consequence to, and we teach the dog, hey, if you try to attack a kid or think about it, this is what happens. Okay. And then if, depending on the owner, we may progress it to where we would, we correct the dog, dog is on the muzzle, and then we bring the child in closer, again, in a very strict fashion, to see if we can turn the dog around and get them to like kids so that they don't go after them. Again, I can't make them like them, but I have exercises to help. And if it happens, if it happens, if it doesn't, it doesn't. But at least we've stopped the dog from, in a sense, proactively trying to go after a child. Okay, so that's the difference with Toby, is that he's in response to a personal boundary being crossed, and him telling them you need to respect these boundaries. Okay, so when applied to behavior, you can't do it technically too soon before, because the dog doesn't have foresight. The dogs don't think like, they don't wake up in the morning and think, I'm going to attack a kid.
Right.
You know, it's kind of like there's a kid, then the dog responds, right? Or the kid pulls its tail, then the dog responds. They're reactive. They're not proactive like a human is. You can wake up one day and decide, I'm going to start running 5 miles every day and just do it. Dogs don't do that. Okay. Other questions? So the most common question that I get is, when does the e-collar go away?
Oh.
Okay. And in my opinion, when you need it, it doesn't. Okay. When you don't need it, he's not wearing it. In the house, he's a great dog. You don't need it. If you're just going to walk across the streets of the dog park and you say you don't need it, you don't need it. Like, who cares if you chase him a couple of times? You're at the dog park. He's not going to go anywhere. Right. But then if somebody brought in a stick or something, then you're kind of stuck, right? Because you can't reinforce your rules. And the reason why it doesn't go away is because Toby, in his brain, is a 3 to 4 year old child forever. Okay. As humans, because humans think, if I train my dog and I educate them, they should learn to just be a good dog. And I go, no, because they're a 3 to 4 year old kid. Children need to be told what to do. Go get dressed, go pick up your toys, go eat your food, blah, 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 right? But that 3 to 4 year old matures to a 5 year old, a 12 year old, an 18 year old, a 21 year old, and we get older and wiser and more disciplined, right? Depending on the person. For dogs, he's stuck. And dogs are opportunistic because they're primal animals. So if he goes out and he's like, hey, you don't have that collar on me today, what happens if I try to possess the ball? Oh, nothing? Well, I'm going to possess the ball now, okay? And this has nothing to do with the level of training. Humans are the same way. This is why we have prisons, we have judges, we have cops, we have law enforcement, we have jails, because even though we have all those things in place, some people still commit crimes, right? Do you drive?
Mm-hmm.
Have you been on the expressway?
Yeah.
Do you go the speed limit?
No.
There you go. That's opportunistic behavior. But if you saw a squad car, what would you do?
Slow down.
Exactly. So I look at the e-collar as kind of a cop on a collar. When the dog has it on, he's gonna, Toby's gonna behave himself. And I'm not gonna say he won't ever push the boundaries, because again, humans do the same thing. But the difference is, I can make Toby comply. I can make it happen because I have the means to do so. You can't do that with food. If Toby decides, I'm going to guard this ball or stick, and you use food to call him away from it, and he decides, I can get that later, but I want the stick right now, you're stuck. If you do a prong collar and you remove them off the leash and you have no means of connection to him, and if there's not a really good level of respect and he has something and you tell him, no, Toby, drop it, and he goes, make me. And then you got to go chase him down in order to make him, right? With the e-collar, I don't have that. If one day he decides to press the boundary, there it is. Get over here. Okay? So it's perfectly normal. And I just tell people, when you need it, you have it. If he's going to be off each anywhere, go ahead.
In time, like, let's say, we go to the parks and he's got the collar on and he gets into fights and I use the collar. With time, if like it happens like a few times, on the 7th time, will he start to associate that if I'm getting in a fight, I'm gonna get vibrated, and then maybe he's starting to learn to not do that, or no?
Yes and no. He'll learn that when he has that collar on, that there's consequence for his behaviors. Okay. And just because he has the collar doesn't mean you're always using it, right? So if you've been very consistent with the training, the obedience, and correcting him for things that you don't want, when he has the collar on, yes, he's going to be in the mode of, I'm not going to start a fight today because I know mom and dad can stop it, right? So it's again, it's like a cop on a collar. His behavior is going to shift. Now, If one day you give them a correction and the next day you don't for the same behavior, you're creating a gambler. Okay, so you have to be consistent. So for me, this is why I get really fast results, because I'm a trainer. I'm very consistent. I disagree with everything I don't want right off the bat. So within 48 hours, the dog's a completely different dog. Okay, because they're like, Jesse doesn't have any gray area. Jesse's black and white, and that's how dogs live. They're black and white. There is no gray area. Humans create gray area, and that's where problems happen. Okay, so my dogs have been off leash trained for 8 years, and they'll still wear the collar. But I'll press the button like once in a blue moon. You know, maybe a squirrel runs by real fast in front of them, and predatory instinct kicks in, and they go, nope, not going to do that, right? Because it's so sudden. You know, they're animals at the end of the day. But other than that,
in an instance like that where there's a squirrel, he goes for squirrels.
Mhm.
He's never gotten one, but he like pulls. You would use it then too.
Depends. So like, let's say you're walking with Toby, right, on a normal walk. He should be at your side. Okay. So when you take one step, he takes one step. You take 5 steps, he takes 5 steps. When you stop, he automatically sits. This is what they completely slack leash. Okay. No tension. I don't care what the environment is. Okay. So if he's under control and he's under command, ideally we don't even see anything, right? He might acknowledge the squirrel, but he's thinking, nope, I'm doing this. So it's kind of like clocking him in. He's working. So like right now I'm working. I'm not on my phone texting my friends, right? But after this, I'm clocked out. I could text my friends, right? It's the same thing with your obedience. Now, if he's off the clock and he's free running around at the park and he decides there's a squirrel, right? You can still disagree with it. You can still teach him, yes, you're free, but it doesn't mean you can chase a squirrel. Okay. And if you want to put it on control, like I get some clients or some dogs that are very prey driven. So the owners use it to their advantage and they'll say, Jesse, I don't care if he chases squirrels. I just need to make sure he can come back. And I go, yeah, no problem. Let's use that, because then I can use the squirrels and chasing the squirrels as a reward. So I'm not against the dog being a dog. I just want to make sure that I have the means of getting them back and under control if needed. Okay. And I don't create robots, because I think that's one of people's fears, is like, oh, is my dog going to be a robot? I'm like, no, it's going to be the same dog. It's family pet obedience. Like, I'm not trying to train your dog to be like, you know, a competition dog. That's why I say I only care about what's going to be applicable to you. And yours is, this is a pretty standard family pet thing. Doesn't pull on the leash, comes when I call him no matter what, and minor behavior stuff. Okay. Now, if you go with him to like a restaurant patio and you don't want him to be all over the place and you want him to sit still for an hour or 2 hours, we can get that as well if it's applicable. If it's not applicable, then I'm not worried about it.
It's like hit or miss. I think he's pretty, like, he'll sit. He likes to like sniff, obviously, like dogs. I don't know. He likes to like sniff around and walk around, but he's pretty chill.
Yeah, I mean, again, that's completely up to you. That's just as an example, right? If you wanted that level of control, you can get even more.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, but yours is simple. I'm just thinking leash walking, come when called, no matter what, and then the minor behavior stuff. That's why I said 6 classes is what you fall under. If you wanted more, then it'd be like, well, that's where the 9 and 12 weeks come into play.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are we wrapping it up?
Yeah.
Can I go grab Paul really quick? He was supposed to come back, but I want him to hear the plan for the classes.
Sure.
One second. All right, I don't know. He's on a call, so
no worries.
He'll try to come.
I'll have this video up and probably by the 5 o'clock today.
Okay.
And Maria's gonna follow up to send the information. and I'll send her the link so she can send that to you guys so that Paul can watch everything.
Okay. And then
Um,
can you just tell me how like the trainings work? Like, are we like where does it happen? How?
sure. So currently, because of the whole virus thing,
Right.
it used to be home to home. Now we've been meeting everybody at Oz Park. It's a very distracting, realistic environment that if you can do it there, anywhere else should be easy peasy. Okay. So Maria would get in contact with you. She set up a time that works well for you and Paul. And then you would meet us once a week for an hour. And it's completely verbal instruction. So I coach you through everything. Okay. You're doing all the training at that session, but I'm not touching the dog. It's all through you. Okay. And we've had great success with it. That's why I love e-collars, because it makes things very easy. We've been recording all the sessions. So then after the session, we put it up on YouTube. And then if you ever forgot something, if you need to go to something, because it's a lot of information, you just go there and you can watch your lesson. And I suggest, if you're kind of unsure or like just wanting to learn more, they're all on YouTube. They're uncut, they're unedited from beginning to end, so that you can see live action, like, oh, like this is how it works. And you get to see the effectiveness of it and how effective it really is and how easy it is to actually teach, okay? And then what we've done is we've provided a complimentary 2 Zoom sessions with the training. So you get 6 in person plus 2 Zoom sessions at no extra charge, okay? And so those Zoom sessions are for like any, if you have any questions, instead of wasting a session in person for questions, we just do it over Zoom. And you get the most out of those in-person sessions. In terms of layout, the first thing we always teach is the leash walking, because it's the easiest thing and it's the foundation for everything. Again, that's 2 classes. Then we progress to recall, that's 2 classes. And then we progress into behavior stuff. So if you wanted to meet like at a dog park or something, we'll see what we can do, if we can meet somewhere nearby. It just depends on what the calendar looks like. Again, due to the epidemic, I'm stretched between a lot of things. I have to do pickup and drop offs for my daycare. I'm operating on reduced staff, so I'm here to operate as a handler. Plus I have my private clients, so we're trying to get as many people on Saturday and Sunday as possible. That once that's filled up, we're going to open up another day, to try to keep me as open as possible during the week, because that's our busiest time during the daycare days. But then other than that, it's pretty straightforward. There's nothing that here, again, that's out of the ordinary that raises a red flag for me that I would say like it's a concern. It's all pretty normal and healthy behavior for a dog. It's really just educating you guys so that you understand where he's coming from and being proactive in preventing those situations from happening. Okay.
One more thing, sorry, I forgot to say this in the beginning, and this isn't that big of a deal, but we can do whatever we want to him, although sometimes when he's like laying and no food, nothing, but like if I'm like, I like just like bug him a lot, like not bug him, but like I'm just like always like trying to like be just as close as I can to him, because I'm like obsessed. And sometimes when he's laying down and I'm like trying to squeeze him or like grab his face to like give him kisses, he like lets me know. He just like, he does like this weird, like, it's not a growl, but like deep, like chest, like noise. And Paul says that's probably not good, but like he's never like acted on it or anything, but just FYI.
I mean, it could possibly be some like a very low level disagreement. My pit bull does the same thing. Okay. Yeah. And you want to think like, as a human being, you have boundaries, right? So does Toby. Yeah. And I'm all about respecting people's boundaries, and I don't care if you're a dog or a hamster or whatever. Some personalities, they don't care. Some personalities do care. Yeah. Is the way I look at it as that, affection that you're wanting is for your benefit. Yeah. Not Toby's. Right. Okay. I don't care what you do with your dog. At the end of the day, it's your dog. Mm-hmm. But that's how I look at it. If I did that to my dog and they were like, I'm not comfortable with that, I would respect that and go, okay, like I don't need it like to live, you know, because I have so many other things that I do with them that I'm like, I'm not worried about it.
Yeah.
So that's my take on it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I know.
So, because you got to think, you know, you're also a part of his life, and like, let's say you're pressing his boundary, and he's telling you, you know, I disagree with it, but I'm letting it happen because your mom. Is that it could lower his threshold for some other people because he's always being pushed, and then he goes, man, I deal with mom all day, and I got to deal with you. Forget about it. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, so to understand dogs, really, you just need to understand yourself as a human, you know, and you start to look at things, you go, oh, wow, this makes a lot of sense. I'm like, you know, we're the same way because we're not that different. The only difference is we see past, present, future. We have a language, a very complex language, and we have an imagination that allows us to like create things. Whereas dogs are in the present, they're very black and white, and they lack the level of communication that we do. You know, like if you did that to Paul could tell you like, sweetie, like I've had a long day, please not right now, you know.
Right.
Whereas Toby doesn't have that.
Right.
Okay, so that's how I look at things. So Maria will get in contact with you.
Okay.
And then I'll get this uploaded as quickly as possible. I got some daycare stuff to handle.
Okay.
And then we'll send you the link so that Paul can watch everything. I highly suggest, you know, you go to my YouTube channel, watch my training videos. They're all uncut, unedited, you know, to help you understand and see like this is effective and it's, in my opinion, humane, and gets us, how do you say, reliable results right off the bat.
Okay.
Okay? Yeah. So if you need anything else, feel free to let Maria know. Otherwise, she'll get in contact with you and then follow up from there. Okay?
Okay. Great.
Awesome. Thank you. Take care.
You too. Bye-bye.